Simple Tales presents The Palace of the Sleeping Prince, a Persian folktale. Have you ever wondered whether hope can survive when all reason says it should be abandoned? Most people believe that every locked door must eventually remain closed, that every unanswered prayer must one day fall silent. But the old storytellers of Persia believed that patience can awaken miracles long before force ever could. This is the story of the Palace of the Sleeping Prince. Long ago, beyond deserts where the sands burned like embers, there stood a magnificent kingdom surrounded by gardens of roses and cypress trees. Its ruler was a wise king, beloved by his people. He had only one child, Prince Arman. From the day he was born, joy filled every corner of the palace. The prince grew gentle rather than proud. He greeted servants by name. He listened to shepherds as carefully as scholars. Even the palace birds seemed unafraid of him. People whispered that one day he would become the greatest ruler Persia had ever known. But fate often chooses its own path. On the prince's 20th birthday, a mysterious traveler appeared at the palace gates. He wore robes faded by countless journeys and carried only a wooden staff, polished smooth by time. When the king welcomed him, the traveler looked sadly toward the young prince. There is a shadow following him. The celebration fell silent. "What shadow?" asked the king. "The kind that cannot be fought with swords." The traveler reached into his satchel and produced a single white jasmine flower. "When this flower loses its fragrance, the prince will fall into a sleep from which no physician can wake him." The king demanded to know how such a fate could be prevented. The traveler simply shook his head. "Some destinies cannot be avoided. They can only be understood." Before dawn, the stranger disappeared as quietly as he had arrived. Years passed. The jasmine remained fresh. Its sweet fragrance never faded. Slowly, the king began believing the warning had been nothing more than the dream of an old wanderer. Then, one quiet spring morning, the flower lost its scent. That very afternoon, Prince Arman collapsed while walking through the palace gardens. His breathing remained calm. His heart beat steadily. But his eyes never opened again. The greatest healers in Persia hurried to the palace. They prepared rare medicines, burned precious herbs, whispered ancient prayers. Nothing changed. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The prince neither aged nor weakened. He simply slept. Unable to bear seeing him surrounded by endless sorrow, the king ordered a beautiful palace built high upon a lonely mountain overlooking the kingdom. Its halls were filled with sunlight. Its windows overlooked rivers, forests, and distant snow-covered peaks. There the sleeping prince rested peacefully while trusted guardians watched over him. Many believed he would never awaken. Years passed. The old king died. New rulers came and went. Children grew into grandparents. The mountain palace slowly faded into legend. Travelers claimed they sometimes glimpsed its white towers shining among the clouds. Few believed such stories. Far below the mountain lived a young carpet weaver named Laleh. Her family possessed little wealth, yet every carpet she created seemed almost alive. Birds woven into her designs appeared ready to sing. Flowers seemed ready to bloom. Her grandmother often smiled. "You weave with your heart." That is why your work remembers beauty. One autumn evening, while gathering wildflowers upon the mountain slopes, Laleh discovered an elderly gardener tending roses beside an ancient stone wall. His beard was white as almond blossoms. His hands were rough from years of quiet labor. "You are far from home," he observed. "I lost the path," Laleh admitted. The old man smiled gently. "Sometimes, so do the paths." He opened a weathered wooden gate hidden beneath climbing vines. Beyond it stood the forgotten palace. Morning sunlight shimmered upon marble courtyards. Fountains still flowed with crystal water. The gardens bloomed as though untouched by time. Laleh stood speechless. "I thought this place existed only in stories." The gardener nodded. "Stories often remember what people forget." He led her quietly through peaceful halls until they entered a sunlit chamber. There, upon a carved ivory bed, lay a young man sleeping as peacefully as if only a single afternoon had passed. His face held no trace of illness. The same white jasmine rested in a crystal vase beside him, the same flower from the old prophecy, still pale and still silent. The air smelled faintly of cedar and roses. "The sleeping prince," whispered Laleh. The old gardener nodded once. For many years, Laleh stepped closer. So many people must have tried to wake him. They did. They shouted at him. They shook him. They searched for magic. They never asked what he dreamed. She did not fully understand his words. Before leaving, she gently placed one freshly picked wildflower beside the prince's pillow. Nothing happened. The gardener smiled anyway. "You may return if you wish." "Why do you allow me to come?" she asked. "Because you expect nothing. And what if he never wakes?" The gardener looked toward the window. "Then you will have brought flowers to someone who needed quiet." From that day onward, Laleh visited whenever her work allowed. She never arrived empty-handed. In autumn, she brought wild chrysanthemums. In winter, she read poems by Hafez while snow gathered on the windowsill. One bitter morning, she brought nothing at all. She simply sat beside the bed and warmed her hands over a small brazier until her fingers could move again. She expected nothing in return. The prince never stirred. Winter became spring. Spring became summer. Months quietly passed. One evening, while finishing a new carpet beneath the prince's window, Laleh accidentally pricked her finger upon the loom's needle. A single drop of blood fell onto the weaving. She sighed. "I have ruined it." The old gardener examined the carpet carefully. "No. You have finished it." The tiny crimson thread became the heart of a blooming rose woven into the design. It was the most beautiful carpet Laleh had ever created. Without hesitation, she spread it beside the prince's bed. "It belongs here," the gardener asked softly. "You would leave your finest work behind." She smiled. Beauty should stay where it is most needed. That night, the palace felt strangely different. The white jasmine beside the prince's pillow, silent for decades, suddenly released its fragrance into the dark. Then the fountains seemed to sing more clearly. The wind carried the scent of roses through every hall. For the first time in many decades, the sleeping prince drew a deeper breath. His fingers moved. Slowly, they reached toward the crimson rose woven into the carpet beside him. His eyes opened. Morning sunlight filled the chamber. Prince Arman looked around in quiet wonder. "It is spring," he whispered. Laleh could not speak. Tears filled her eyes. The old gardener simply smiled, as though he had been expecting this sunrise all along. The prince looked toward him. How long have I slept?" The gardener answered gently. "Long enough to learn what cannot be taught while awake." The prince looked toward the carpet beside his bed, then toward the young woman standing nearby. "You stayed." Laleh lowered her eyes. "I only visited. You owed me nothing." She shook her head. "Kindness is not a debt. It is a gift." The old gardener quietly stepped toward the doorway. Before leaving, he turned once more. The spell was never broken by force. It yielded to a heart that asked for nothing in return. Then he disappeared into the morning gardens. No one ever saw him again. Some believed he had been an ordinary gardener. Others whispered he had been Khidra, the eternal guide who appears when hearts are ready for wisdom. No one could say for certain. Prince Arman returned to the kingdom. Though many offered him crowns and ceremonies, he first walked among farmers, merchants, shepherds, and children. He wished to know the people whose lives had continued while his own had stood still. When at last he became king, he ruled with quiet patience rather than haste. He ordered the mountain chamber kept open. Travelers who climbed the slopes found rest there, and the carpet with its crimson rose remained beside the bed. Beside him stood Queen Laleh, whose woven carpets came to decorate not only the palace floors, but the homes of ordinary families throughout the kingdom. People said they carried a strange warmth, as though every thread remembered an act of kindness. The old storytellers of Persia never claimed that every sleeping prince would awaken. They believed something far more hopeful. While magic may open closed eyes, only kindness can awaken the soul. Thank you for listening to Simple Tales. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more timeless tales from around the world. Until next time, may every kindness you give quietly bloom long after you have forgotten planting it.